And today's challenge is to modify this 2011 GLK 350 Mercedes X204 to add a silly little feature that it just doesn't have, and that feature is the puddle light. What it has is this little, it's got this little reflector here, and that's all there is. Unfortunately, you can't just plug a light in here because there's no wiring for it. So I've ordered some parts. I've got the shadow lights. These are actually projector style. Pretty cool. If you'll see later if it works. And the cable to add it to the car. So let's get started and see how this whole thing goes. Wish me luck. I'm using a tool to make sure I don't hurt it. There is the door module. All right. The plug I need is this one here. It's the pin, it's plug number 6, and I need to add some wires to it, so with any luck I'll be able to release the catch here and wiggle it free. Now it's been in there a while, folks, so it's not going to want to come out without a fight. Okay, I'm actually using the cable itself for a little bit of leverage, and I finally managed to get this thing loose. And the good news is it looks like I'm going to have room to get it out. Okay, here's the package. Second time I've ordered it, actually. The first time it actually got delivered to the wrong address. The vendor was nice enough to actually send me another set of the cables for free, which I thought was really nice, since really the delivery issue was not their problem. Basically, the reason I ordered this is because, yes, I could probably make something up, but this wasn't very spendy. It comes with the proper cables and will allow me to connect my puddle lights, which are here, with the right connector and everything, and route it in the door with a nice anti-rattle coating on the cables. So, really great solution. All right, now, to get this installed, you have to pry this this cover up, and it may be possible to take the cover entirely off. I just don't think that's going to be necessary. Now, this little tab here along the center, which you can barely see there, also has to be raised up because that is part of the locking mechanism. So once you've got the whole thing out of the way, you can slide the number 3 pin. You hear it click into place into the number 3 hole, and I'm going to slide the number 4 pin here. I'm going to the blue wire into the number 4 hole, and again it should click. Yep, nice solid click. I pull this out, squeeze it back together. I think that's probably going to be fine, and then I can plug it back in to the module. Okay, folks, this is the right side, passenger side US in most countries. Difference here is there's nothing plugged into pin 6, into plug number 6 rather. So you're gonna have to make your connections directly to the pins there. You could go out and see if you could buy the actual connector housing, but I think it'll be fine just plugging them in directly. For what it's worth, this particular unit I've got is capable of working with the connector connected either polarity. So, but for what it's worth, the pin 5, the one closest to the blue plug, but basically the last one on the right, on the bottom row there, is the positive. The one next to it in the middle is the negative, if your particular lights require that. If it's an incandescent, it won't matter, but you probably want to test your lights before you hook it up, but that's the polarity you need to keep in mind. So let's get this thing hooked up. All right, and what we need to do is pop some of the peripheral pins in the door front, in the door panel, just to be able to get enough room to get this wire routed around the corner. Now I'm not going to plug it in. I'm not going to start by plugging it in because there's no connector to hold the pins in place. So I'm going to make that the last step on this side. Alright, so just need to get this connected. And that ought to be enough. I just need to be able to route the wire along the bottom and into this spot. And this is all that's there, folks. If you don't have the premium interior lighting package, $300 option, that's all you get. So, all right, let's see if we can get this thing routed. I'm going to disconnect the cable. I'm going to just drop it down through the door frame and fish it out the corner down here. Whenever I get enough of it down there to reach. All right, run it along the bottom, tuck it inside the frame, and get it up inside and out the port. So now I'm going to plug this in. I'm going to install it. That's what is involved with installing it, folks. And then I'm just going to pull this a little bit snug, and it's around it's around the outside of the clips down there. I can get it inside a couple of them just by pushing it that way. Now we're done inside the door, and we have this much wire left, and because I need to make it as sturdy as I can, I'm just going to tie this cable to this cable, a couple loops, take up some of the slack, so I have enough to work with here, but not any weight that's hanging on that will be hanging on here. So now the trick is I've got to get this plugged in to those two pins, and quite honestly, I don't want to do this with the battery on because I could very easily short. These are very, very tiny connectors, folks, and if you touch between 3 and 4, you're going to short out something and going to blow the module, most likely, possibly blow a fuse. So I'm going to disconnect my battery just short term while I do that. Okay, one of the steps you're going to have to take is to protect these two pins from each other. Without the plastic housing there to keep them aligned, they could flex, and they can actually pivot on the pins just a little bit and move. So I'm going to slide a piece of heat shrink tubing over this one. If you don't have heat shrink, you could probably use any other kind of tubing, but you'll want to make sure it's taped or somehow secured so it doesn't wander and doesn't slide down and expose the connector. So what I'm going to do here is just get this back where it belongs with just a tiny bit of the nose sticking out, and then I'm going to use my soldering iron, although you can use a match, a candle, a torch, just about any heat source to shrink this stuff down so that it becomes a tight, permanent seal you don't have to worry about. So, all right, we are basically there. Okay, that's a good connection. I could do it on the other one, but quite honestly, it's not really necessary because there's nothing else in there for it to get up against. And push it down firmly using a pair of needle nose, and then put my now updated blue connector on pin number 4, and again push it down firmly. All right, and that is in place. All right, now you'll need to be just a little bit cautious here. And maybe I should have put a 90-degree bend in these before I installed them, but basically, once this is installed and this is all closed up, it's not likely anybody's going to be messing with it anytime soon. So I'm going to tuck everything in place, move the module up, clip it down, and I do believe we're probably ready to test the function. Okay, folks, I know when I'm beat, and I'm beat. Whenever I'm measuring it with the multimeter, whenever you plug anything into it, it goes to 0. It just doesn't seem to want to work. I've run out of options, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do an alternate wiring job. It's a little goofy, but it will work. And it basically, here it is. This big, looks orange, but it's supposed to be red. That looks like orange to me, folks. This wire carries 12 volts all the time. Okay, so we can hook up one of these wires to it. Pin 9 down here on plug 7, that's this brownish wire here. That is a ground that's only grounded when the door is open. That's actually the sense for the door being open. So by tapping between this always hot and this line that is grounded only when the door is open and hooking your light up to it, you're going to get your puddle lights on. So that's pretty clever. I really thank the guy who came up with that. So all these cool pins and preconceived wiring harnesses, cool as they are, really aren't going to do me a bit of good right now. So I'm going to have to cut them off and attach to the wiring harness here. And I'm going to try to do that as clean as possible by disconnecting the plugs and pulling the pins out of the housings so I can solder them properly and apply proper heat shrink. Battery disconnected. Alright, start by sliding, unplugging this plug, sliding the black portion out of it. That's part of what's keeping this lower one together. Okay, that released it. More or less. Partially. Okay, I can see I have to release it again up here. I believe this might be a dual release pin here. More or less. So, at any rate, I've got it out. So let's go ahead and get this one stripped and soldered. And while the soldering iron is heating up, I'm going to slide a piece of heat shrink that's just big enough to go over the connector itself, so that it'll shrink down nicely. And then next step is I take my wire strippers and I'm going to, let's move it back a little bit. I'm going to strip back just a small portion. Okay, I think I'm going to have to do this in stages, folks. I'll go ahead and cut it twice and then go get a razor blade so I can remove that center section I just loosened. Now, why am I not just using some crimp-on connectors? Because I hate them. They're really not very good connectors, and they're very likely to cause an intermittent problem down the road, and that's something I really do not want. So just try to do this without getting myself or too many of the strands. I got a couple of them, but that's all right. Now I'm just going to select one of the sacrificial wires here. Let's call it this one. All right, and I might have a use for this elsewhere, so I'm going to keep it a little bit longer. And I'm going to strip this one back, twist the conductors together. I'm going to also run it through the same piece of heat shrink for obvious reasons. You'll see whenever we get to the next step. All right. Get the heat shrink back as far as I can out of the way. Give this a nice solid wrap around the heavier wire. Okay, one of the issues I'm having, it's a cool day here, and that is affecting the solder's, this tiny little soldering iron's ability to heat this up very quickly. I should probably get my heavier one out, but this is what I got right now. So now, slide the heat shrink up. And shrink this tubing down over both of these wires, forming a waterproof and basically a nice hermetically sealed connection in there that will never ever cause a problem. All right, now that we got that, let's put the connector back together. Remember which way the pin was plugged at whenever you take it, put it back in. Okay, slide this one in from the side and reinstall it in its position. Next, we're going to get the number 7 plug out and do basically the same thing to the little brown wire there. And it's probably going to be a little bit fiddly to get out. There we go. That wasn't too bad. Okay, plan B, I just slid the whole connector out. I just spread it and pushed the black connector out. Let's remember the way it goes in. And then we should be able to get to the wire in question. And again, there's always the option of just slicing back a little of this insulation and wrapping and taping it and not worrying about the heat shrink, but I'm going to try to do it right since I'm formalizing this on a video. So the pin's out, and now we just do the same process we did with the other one, stripping this back and connecting the blue wire to this side. Have to find the right gauge. I don't know what that is offhand, so that looks about right. And again, I got a couple strands, but I don't think that's going to cause a problem. Now I'm going to trim my blue wire back, leaving enough to do a good job connecting. Strip it back. Alright, so we got that. And before I forget, I'm going to get another piece of heat shrink and slide it over. Slide the blue wire up through the heat shrink, pull the heat shrink back below where the splice is going to be as far as possible, and probably have to pull the blue wire back separately. There we go. Now wrap the two together. And sorry for the camera work, folks, but the camera is right exactly where I need to be. Should take the solder easier. Okay, you can see my heat shrink is kind of getting a head start on things there. That's going to be a little bit difficult to get over. Okay, once it's cooled down, I may have to trim back that heat shrink a little bit. I was afraid of that. Just a slit down the edge should do it. Slide it up over the joint. Okay, that looks pretty substantial. Now, once again, avoiding my beautiful Mercedes-Benz plastic upholstery, I will heat up the heat shrink. That'll do it. That'll keep it safe. All right, now all that remains is we'll slide this back into the number 9 slot with the little locking tab pointing in the right direction. Let's see, that's going to be this way. Here to click in place. All right. And now the whole plug goes back in there. There you go. We're plugged in. So now we have positive and we have ground. So time for battery connection. And happy days. We are projecting, and you can't see it because it's daylight, but there you go. Okay, next step is to get the module stuck back in place, and to do that, this plug has to go in the obvious hole, but push the bottom of the module toward the outside of the door, and you'll feel it engage a slot down there. And once you know it's not moving around anywhere, then it's just a matter of rotating this into place, clicking that in, and you'll feel it's solid. It's not going to go anywhere. Make sure the cables are out of the way, and this little clip here has to slide over this slot. So just make sure you get that correct, and then once you've got the seam where it belongs, then just punch down the back side, and we're done, ready to go to the other side. Okay folks, it's not really dark out. I am starting to lose light, but that is the result we were looking for. I'll come out a little later and I'll let you see it in its full glory. And just in case you were wondering, yes, the light really does go off whenever you close the door. Awesome. Okay, it's not really fully dark, but it's plenty dark to show off the new Puddle lights. Check that out, folks. Really sharp, very good graphics, I gotta say. That is impressive. Does a good job lighting up the immediate area, and at least as important, it does give you a light from the back perspective, so oncoming motorists will actually have a chance of seeing the door open too. So all in all, good install.